we did it. I would argue that this might be the biggest Chaparral boat audio system ever built. Today we're going to go through everything we did in the Chaparral from the design process all the way up to the finished product. Looking at it right here, it might not look like we've done much, but as we walk through this boat, you're going to be surprised of how much we've added to this for the audio system. This build has been here for the past, I think, 4 to 6 months or so. He left it through the winter. We haven't been working on it the whole 4 to 6 months. It's kind of been here. We take on these bigger jobs and we work on them kind of in between other jobs. There's been a substantial amount of effort put into this build. I think the design came out amazing. The whole system, I don't think there would be one thing I would change about it, even if it was my own boat and I was to build my dream system. This is probably it. I guess we'll get started with talking about what the customer was hoping for when we started this project. The main thing that he was looking for is he was looking for a lot of bass. He's a bass head. He likes deep bass. You know, he likes the bigger woofer type stuff. So for that, we went with his original idea was we were going to there was a seat right here with a cooler underneath of it, and we were going to take that out, and we're trying to get 3 13W7s JL audios in here in ported enclosures. Early in the process, we realized there's not quite enough space in this area to do 3 of them without doing a massive amount of modification, which we still did, but we didn't have to cut up the boat any to get this to fit in here. So we were able to find a spot for 2 other woofers. So we did 2 13W7s here, and then we did 2 13W7s in the walkthrough here between the cockpit and the bow. So designing a system of this caliber, there's a lot of things that you got to take into consideration. You got to take into consideration, you know, your charging system, the amount of batteries, how the customer plans on using it throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the summer. When we're planning the system, try and plan accordingly so that he can use it, you know, all day long and then come back to the dock, recharge it. But one thing that we don't really rely on in boat systems is the alternator of the boat, because most boaters will use their boats in ways where they'll take the boat out, they might sit and float and swim and hang out with, you know, friends and stuff like that without the boat running for pretty much most of the day. So when you're doing that, your alternator doesn't have a chance to recharge whatever batteries you have that are running the stereo. So the main thing that we do in most of our systems and these larger systems in boats is we put in a big shore power charger. So most of your marinas will have a typical 20 amp outlet that you can plug your boat into when you get back for the evening. Most of these boats, you know, people keep at the marina or they take them back to their house where they would have power to plug them in. So we want to size our charging system so that when they get back at the end of the day, the charger is big enough that within an 8 to 10 hour period, if they plug it in, they'll be able to charge their battery pack back up to 100%. So let's say they go out Saturday all day, they drain their batteries down to 25% or all the way to 0. I want them to be able to go back home, plug it in, and within 10 hours have it charged all the way back up to 100% so that the next day they can use it to its full potential. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to size the power bank, meaning the batteries, accordingly to how many amps you have in the boat, how long you want the boat to last. The one thing that people might overlook is in this particular boat, the amount of amplifiers, the total current draw, like the fusing for all the amps, is 600 amps. You know, there's 4 amps that have a 100 amp fuse on them a piece, so that's 400 amps. And then I think there's 2 80 amps and then a 60 amp. We're pretty close in that math. Might be a little bit off. But those amps aren't going to be drawing that at all times. You know, that's peak power, full tilt, and people aren't going to be listening to it full tilt for 8 hours, maybe. I don't know if they're out partying, but that's a pretty long day. This boat is so loud that I don't even think you could handle it for that long. Even with it being a 600 amps worth of total draw, I would average it down to maybe 100 amps or so when it's musical and things like that, and that's still pretty loud. So we did a 600 amp hour battery bank in here. We did lithium batteries, the Battleborns. If you take that 100 amps, we have 600 amp hours, so you could get 6 hours, let's say, out of it at 100 amps of current being pulled, which is still super high. I have no doubt that this thing's going to last him all day. if he can listen to it that loud to 6 to 8 hours, that's going to be quite the feat. People can argue that math, but we've done enough systems that we know how long things are going to last with a certain amount of amps. We have customers that do listen to it full tilt. I mean, we've had systems that we have 6 to 8 batteries on, and they have 10 to 16 amplifiers, and they can listen to it all day long, pretty much as loud as they want, and then come back that evening and then recharge it with their shore power charger. So I think the easiest thing to do right now is maybe just start at the head unit and work our way back from the head unit to the next processor, to the amplifiers, to the speakers, and we'll just kind of show you what we all did. So you can see here at the driver's seat of the boat, this is where we did all the stereo head unit, all the knobs to control subwoofers and volumes and epicenter and lighting. This is where the factory stereo was when the boat came in. We did make this new piece here. The piece that was here before was just like a black plastic piece. So we matched the wood grain to the factory dash wood grain and then made this new piece. And so then we did also laser engrave a 2-piece plastic where it's wood grain on the top and then it's white behind it. So we can put it in our laser machine and then we can engrave so that the white comes through, and then we labeled everything. To begin here, we've got the JL Audio MMR40 controller. This goes to a hideaway unit that is basically the brain for the stereo. And then below it, we have a control knob to the left that is for the epicenter. And what an epicenter does is it takes, say, stuff that doesn't have very good bass response, you know, like let's say you have older rock and roll music or a little bit older recording that doesn't have that great bass. It takes and it restores that bass and takes the frequency and moves it to a lower frequency to kind of enhance the bass in those type of music that don't quite have that punch that you're looking for. So he'd be using this for music like that. If he's using, you know, if he's listening to newer music that has a lot of bass already built into it and is recorded really good, the epicenter knob really isn't going to come into play. So the next knob right here goes to JL amplifiers, and this is called a DRC 205. So this is a dual knob. So it's got an outer knob and an inner knob. So these two knobs can be programmed to do different things. So this one here we have set for the subwoofers. So the outer one does 2 of the woofers. So like the 2 up here would be the outer knob, and then the inner knob would be the 2 in the rear back here that are in the bar that I'll show you here in a bit. So he can adjust how much bass is in the front subwoofers and the rear subwoofers independently. I will note though that this deck also has zone controls built into it. So he can control the bow, cockpit, towers, and subs all from the radio also, but he wanted to have really quick control by just going right to this to be able to turn it up and down without having to press in and go to a menu within the deck. So this gives him quite a bit quicker control. He can also do most of the stuff from the deck too if he did want to. So right next to this bass knob, we have another one of the DRC 205. And what this one does is it controls the cockpit speakers. So everything in the lower portion of the boat, including the bow and everything here in this part of the cockpit, he can turn those up and down. And then the other one does the tower speakers. So he can really adjust things quickly. So let's say people are surfing, they really want the music up loud. You can turn those up really loud, but then turn down the stuff inside the boat quickly so everybody can talk in here and it's not crazy loud. Or vice versa, if he's going down the lake, nobody's surfing, he doesn't want the music blasting out the back, he can turn the towers down quickly. The next knob over here is the JL Audio lighting controller. And so what this does is this does the color change lighting in all the speakers. So you can press this in and go through modes. So you can press it in, adjust the brightness of how bright all the speaker lighting is and the amplifier lighting. You can press it in again to make it cycle through different colors, and then press it in again to adjust how fast it cycles through those colors. So that pretty much covers this area in the front of the boat. From here, we'll move to the brain box for the stereo and then the epicenter. We did that right behind this driver's seat here where the factory subwoofer was located. So I removed this driver's seat here so you could see this better. So up here at the top, this is the main brain for that head unit I was just showing you. So this has all the RCA outputs, USB inputs, does the Bluetooth. This will feed all the sound to the amplifiers and everything that a normal head unit would do. Below that is the epicenter that I was explaining earlier that takes and restores the bass. This has a plexiglass cover over it so nobody can get in here and touch the adjustments that we worked hard to get set. This is mounted in here. We have an aluminum ring behind this. that screws to the fiberglass. So the inside's made of a composite material, so it will wear good against any elements. If for some reason it did get wet or anything like that, it's not going to swell or rot or mold. And then this panel right here, this is made out of white Vicom, which is another plastic. And then we did the wood grain inlay to match the factory dash parts. And then this is magnetic, so this can pop off, so we can service it if we needed to. All right, from that control box and the epicenter, the signal travels down and then goes to these amplifiers here. So we have 3 of the JL Audio MVI amplifiers, and then 4 of the HD amplifiers below that run the subwoofers. So a little rundown of how this works is this one over here. This is a MV808i. This one is set up to run the front 2 driver and passenger 770s. I'm sorry, 4 770s. Those are a 7.7 inch speaker, and we'll show you those here in a little bit. This is bridged down to a 4-channel mode, meaning it takes the 8 channels, makes it 4 channels, so that we got more power to those 4 speakers that are up by the driver and the passenger. The second amplifier here, this was the factory amplifier that came with the boat, which is pretty cool because it is a nice model amplifier and it's something we would have used anyway. So we utilize this. It's 6 channels, so it runs the 2 speakers that are back here in this cockpit area, and then it also runs the 4 speakers that are in the bow. Also JL Audio M6 7.7 inch speakers, which I'll show you in a bit. This amplifier right here is another MV808i. This is also bridged down to 4 channels, and this runs all the 4 tower speakers. And those are the M6 880s, which means they're 8.8 inch speakers. These lower amplifiers here, these are JL Audio HD 1200 ones. So each one of these is a 1200 watt amplifier, and each one runs a single subwoofer in the boat. So we have 4 13W7 JL Audio subwoofers. All 4 of them are imported enclosures, and each one of them has 1200 watts running to it. All these amplifiers are mounted to a 3/4 inch amp rack that we made out of Vicom, which is kind of like a starboard, a marine grade type plastic. Very dense, very thick. We CNC'd everything out. We have all the openings for the wires that go behind it. Above these amplifiers are the distribution fusing, which has distribution blocks for power and for ground. We were able to wire most of that up on the bench and then bring this in to wire up the rest of the speaker wires. Below at the bottom, there are some feet that are made out of, I believe that's 1/8 inch aluminum that we bent. We put the customer's initials in it just for fun, and then that mounts to the hole. And then on the sides, there's some mounts that it mounts to there so that it's nice and tight. So with all the trim panels in, this is what you see when you open the seat. We have a carpeted, this is all marine carpet here. This panel goes over the inverter and DC to DC charger. On the front side of it here, we have some grill material so that it can breathe and get the heat in and out. And then the amplifiers also have a vinyl trim piece that we did with a wood inlay and our logo. We also did some color change lighting up above it to light this area up. And then all the sides are also done with marine grade carpet, and the floor also. Right up in the bow of the boat, when we got the boat, there was just a 6-inch speaker in this location right here. Just your standard JL Audio 6-inch speaker. I think they had a chrome grill on it. We swapped that out to a 7.7 inch speaker with the color change LEDs in it. And then we also added a second set up here in the bow of the 7.7 inch speakers. So we have 2 on the driver's side, and then we have 2 on the passenger side. So down on either side of the captain's chair and the passenger's chair here, this is the head here. This opens up so you can use the bathroom and stuff in here. But we built these panels. There was just a factory 6-inch right here before that were in some factory panels that were all gray. So we made new panels. We integrated the wood grain again, and we were able to get 2 of the 7.7 inch speakers. These are the M6 series JL Audios. Color change lights turned out pretty nice. We tried to integrate, some of the shapes that are kind of seen throughout the boat. You can see how this drops down. I don't know if you can see this, but this kind of drops down right here. So we kind of followed that with this line right here. But these turned out pretty sweet. And then there's the driver's side. For tower speakers, we have the 8.8 inch M6 with the color change lights. We also have the downfire accent lights that are hooked up to the back here that we wired to a factory accessory switch. So he can use those when he's cleaning out the boat at night if he needs a little bit more light down in the boat area. Those come in handy. We use the clamp mounts. It's a little tricky getting some wires in and out of this because the tower is power and it goes up and down. So that took a little doing. And then also to make sure that these didn't hit like the windshield when it comes all the way down. We got about a 1/4 inch of to spare on this. So they were really close, but we did have to take also these mounts only comes in certain size for the cutouts. So they'll come in like a 2 1/4, you know, 2 2.5, and so on. But the thing is these bars are usually measured before there's any powder coat on it. So a lot of times it'll be kind of in between the sizes that you really need. So we ordered one set, a little bit too big. Next set, a little bit too small. So kind of like, what is it, Goldilocks bed, or I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so we took the smaller set and then we put them on the router table to enlarge them just by like a 64th, so that they would clamp on there just perfectly. So that was a little bit of an extra step, that's kind of things that you don't foresee, but we made it work. All right, now for the base. So up here, this is between the walkway between the bow and the cockpit area. This used to have a refrigerator in it, which he said he would never use because he usually just uses a cooler and stuff like that. So we took the refrigerator out and then we were able to build a subwoofer enclosure that holds 2 of the 13W7s. It's made out of Russian Baltic birch. We used a poly primer over the whole entire box before we assembled it. We sprayed the inside and the outside to help with, you know, if it were to get a little bit wet or anything like that, hopefully keep the moisture from soaking into the wood. We did explain to the customer that wood isn't the most optimal thing in a boat. We always try and use a composite material when building subwoofer boxes, but the main goal of this boat was the best base possible, and we have always found that a wood box sounds better than any kind of composite material. Even if it's acrylic or, you know, any kind of plastic, anything like that, wood always just sounds better to us. So he was okay with taking the chance of using the wood. We poly primed it to try and take an extra step to seal it up. And I don't think we're gonna have much problems because it's so far back under the dash. And then I'll show you the next one, the other subwoofer box. It's under a countertop. All these trim panels are made out of a composite material before we wrap them in vinyl. So if any water gets onto these, it's not a problem. This stuff will never absorb any water. It would just be if it got way back onto the box that's back in there. So that'd probably have to be a substantial, you know, problem leaving it out with no cover for months on end or something like that in the rain. But anyway, it was explained to the customer. He understands that, and then that's why we went this way. So you can see here we did kind of like a 3 or 4 layer different trim panel. We have an outer layer, an accent white, and then an inner layer that's also gray. Then we did an octagon mesh for the speaker grill, and then we did a wood inlay on this one with our logo in it. We've got LED lights in here. These are all color change. And then the ports go down the sides right here, and then the subwoofers. This box also is 2 separate chambers since we are using separate amplifiers for each subwoofer. So it has a divider in the center. It's pretty much a rectangle box with a couple of angles on the sides to get past where some stuff on the dash came through. If service work did need to be done to this boat behind the dash, because there are some components back there, it's not the easiest to get this out of here, but it's not the worst, I guess. This is magnetized on, would come off. We do have to take out the lower woofer, unbolt it from a mount that we have down there, and then it can be pushed out of the way to service the stuff back there. So this is probably my favorite part of the build. We took a seat out that was here, and then there used to be a cooler that was under here. So, and able to get 2 more of the 13s in here, we built a bar. So we wanted something, you know, functional. We just didn't want a big subwoofer box here. So we were able to build this bar top. We did some like a raised piece here, so you could put some soda cans, beer cans, whatever, beer bottles in here. If you're hanging out, you know, I don't know how well bottles would do because this thing might vibrate a little bit. It's pretty solid though. This is a solid piece of quartz, and this is too. We did the backsplash here, and then we did a little accent gray trim piece in the back here because this outside of the boat does have a little bit of a bow to it. So we kind of shaved that down and then wrapped that in vinyl to kind of contour to the boat to get this backsplash to sit flat on it. So same thing here, we have the gray, white, and then we have the wood trim with the Chaparral logo built into it, two 13W7s. Same thing, the box is divided, so it's two separate boxes since we're on a separate amplifier for each woofer. This one was pretty tricky to figure out because the way that the angles work on the sides, this box was a little bit bigger than this one, so the divider is offset in there. And then to make up the volume that we lost for this side, since we needed so much here, there is a smaller box that's mounted to this one that goes into the side of the hull. That's like almost like a little, I don't know, a little triangle type thing to get a little bit more airspace. And then both of these boxes come down here, and this is divided down here. And then this is pretty much the port area down here, and the port goes back, circles back this way, comes back up to get the port length that we needed to get. Anyway, it was a pretty complex box to figure out, but it turned out great. And it's also functional. So down in this area where the amplifiers are, we also have all the charging system and power bank. So at the bottom here, we have the 6 Battleborn batteries. We machined aluminum bus bars for the power and the ground, where the power is coming out of the one end battery over here, and then the ground's coming out of the end battery over here so that it flows through all the batteries correctly. We also have 2 battery switches here. One is a battery switch that turns off the power that goes to the charger and inverter. And then the other switch is the one that shuts off the power to the complete stereo. We also back here have what they call a DC to DC charger. So if the boat is running, it will send 50 amps of current, or I think that's 700 watts, to the batteries to charge them while the boat is going. You do want to use a DC to DC charger if you're using lithium batteries, because they will pull too much current if you don't put something like that in there, and it could burn up your alternator. We also made a fuse block connector and distro connector for all the LED lighting over here. This has fusing for pretty much everyone individually. There might be a couple that are doubled up, like, you know, this speaker and this speaker that are doubled up. It makes it easier for troubleshooting if you do have LED out, to have everything separated on distro blocks and different fusing. Have a couple relays here that power the main stereo, turn on leads, things like that. And then down here, we machined a block here. This is kind of like a power and ground block for all the smaller accessories that we could tie into for all the lighting, head unit and stuff like that. So since we put the bar on the other side with the subwoofers and took that seat out, there used to be another panel over there that had a speaker in it. So we kind of lost the stereo sound, or the ability to have 2 speakers towards the rear of the boat. So what we did is, there used to be a factory panel here that only had 1 speaker in it that fired up forward. So we took that panel out and we rebuilt this whole piece right here. So everything you see here, we rebuilt. We added a couple more cup holders since we lost 1 or 2 over there. Even though we put a couple on the bar, these are good for when you're going down the lake. So we were able to get 2 of the M6 7.7 inch JL audio speakers in here. So this is set up like left and right. It's a boat. Stereo's not really a huge thing from left to right, but that got us a little bit more sound in the back of the boat here, and then also gave some more spots to put some cup holders. And then we tied in the wood grain to make it look factory, and then we did a little Chaparral logo up here in the top of this. There is a bar up under here, like a grab bar, so if you're going down the lake you can grab this. That used to be kind of down here, but we moved it up top so that we can get a couple more cup holders in here. Down here you're going to see this little plug-in. This is the charge port for the inverter, so when you're in shore power, this is where the factory one was when he bought the boat. He kind of likes it in here. We usually put him towards the rear of the boat, but he was okay with having it here, so this runs to the inverter in the back. This might be a little hard to see. We're right under here. If you pop this open, do have a plug here. This comes off the inverter. It's right next to the bar, so if you wanted to plug in a blender or a little vacuum or something like that to clean up, this would be an AC power outlet that you could use on the dock, or you could use it while you're out in the water, because we did add the 2000 watt inverter in here also. This little switch right here controls the inverter and charger, so he can turn the charger on and off right here from the driver's seat. or you can turn it on to inverter if you wanted to use this outlet right here. So everything's accessible without having to go back and get to the actual charger itself. This right here is in the dash. This is a Victron. This ties into what they call a shunt that's in the back by the inverter. And this will show us all the information we need for the batteries. So it can show us that we're at 100% now. It shows how many amp hours we've used since last charging, how many watts we're pulling or charging with, how many amps, the voltage of the starter battery, the voltage of the house batteries that runs all the stereo and lighting, and then how much time we have left at the amount of power we're pulling right now. It says infinity because we're plugged in. So pretty cool piece. So we can monitor how much time he has left and how much power is left in the system before it's going to go dead. On the back of the boat here, we replaced the factory transom controller with the JL Audio MMR or MM20. This has your volume up and down, track up and down, source selection, and mute. It's pretty basic, but you can do all the controls from the back of the boat if you're back here swimming.